The President. Members, this is the first electrical sitting of the Year of the Rabbit. May I wish you a very successful and prosperous Year of the Rabbit, and then we continue to strive for the welfare of the community. Question 1, the Honorable Tang Fei. President, there are views pointing out that as 2023 started, Hong Kong was greeted by a new wave of price increases, and yet there's been no significant increase in the income of members of the public. The quality of life of members of the public has declined amid the escalating inflation and livelihood pressure. However, the state presidents indicate that it is important to put people first, help them overcome difficulties, especially address prominent economic and livelihood issues that people are concerned with, and truly increase their sense of contentment and happiness. In this connection, will the government inform the Council whether, under the price increase wind, whether the government will formulate effective and precise relief measures to assist members of the public, especially grassroots and low-income families, and protect their livelihood from being aggravated by price increase wind, so as to accomplish actively responding to people's aspiration of solve the details, if not the reasons for that. 2, given that the tariffs of the CLP Power Hong Kong Limited and Hong Kong Electric Company Limited in January this year increased by 19.8% and 45.6% year-on-year, respectively, which far exceeded the increase of about 0.7% in the median income of all households in Hong Kong from the first quarter to the third quarter of last year. Whether the government will consider introducing competition to the electricity market, allowing new electricity suppliers to join the market, and exploring new sources of electricity supply so as to drive down tariffs as much as possible on the premises of ensuring quality, thereby alleviating the burden on the community. If so, of the details, if not the reasons for that. 3, as there are views pointing out the consumption voucher scheme is well received by members of the public and can revitalize the economy, as well as alleviate the burden on the daily lives of our people. Whether the government will continue to disperse consumption vouchers and consider regularizing the disbursement so that once the economy takes a downturn in a year, consumption vouchers of reasonable value may be dispersed to the community according to the fiscal position to relieve people's hardship. If so, of the details, if not the reasons for that. Secretary for Financial Services and the Treasury. President, in consultation with the Environment and Ecology Bureau and other departments, my reply to the 3 parts of the question raised by Mr. Tang Fei is as follows. First, with a complicated and volatile external environment and a bumpy road to economic global recovery ahead, Hong Kong's economy will still be fraught with challenges. Making good use of public resources to support the grassroots and people's livelihood and hence maintain social stability is a top priority for the government. According to the advanced estimates provided by the Census and Statistics Department, the Hong Kong economy contracted by 3.5% in 2022. The consumer price inflation remained moderate in overall terms last year, with the headline and underlying inflation rates averaging 1.9% and 1.7% respectively. Starting from this Monday, we have fully resumed normal travel between Hong Kong and the mainland. It is anticipated that official events as well as business, tourism, and other economic activities will resume more quickly, and cross-boundary people and goods movements will increase steadily. This is expected to boost Hong Kong's exports, transportation and logistics, tourism, retail, and catering sectors, and contribute to a more optimistic sentiment and outlook for Hong Kong's economy as a whole. Looking ahead, while Hong Kong's economy will certainly perform better in 2023 as compared with last year, the external environment is still full of challenges and uncertainties. Economic recovery is, after all, a process. Only by creating a stable and favorable environment for economic development and by adopting business-friendly policies and measures can Hong Kong achieve the greatest extent of economic recovery. While we are striving to consolidate and promote Hong Kong's economic recovery, we should also, in the process of reopening and rejoicing that recovery, dedicate our efforts in improving the living conditions and quality of life of the public. By adopting a governance model that better integrates a proactive and capable government and an efficient market, the current government aims to promote the faster and better development of Hong Kong through measures in the short, medium, and long term. The consultation exercise on the 2023-24 budget is now in full swing. We are gauging and studying the views expressed by different sectors of society. As our community is gradually resuming normal and our economy has begun to stabilize, some members of the public are still expecting certain reliefs as part of the counter-cyclical measures from the government. But on the road to economic recovery, there is also a pressing need to ride on the recovery momentum and allocate additional resources to promote economic development, thus allowing Hong Kong to enjoy speedy, robust, and steady social and economic development in future. We have a fiscal deficit, and the economic environment is unfavorable and financial resources are limited. While we appreciate that members of the public have different expectations for government's relief measures, we must adhere to the principles of exercising fiscal prudence, keeping expenditure within the limits of revenue, and committing resources as and when justified and needed in public finance when we allocate resources for taking foreign necessary initiatives so as to maintain fiscal robustness and sustainability. In deciding what specific measures ought to be taken, the government will consider a host of factors such as prevailing economic situation, our financial position, and public needs in a holistic manner. The second part of the question is about electricity charges. Serving the overall interests of the community tops the agenda of our administration, and we fully understand the concerns and worries of society about the large increase in tariffs. Under the current situation, the government believes that the power companies should shoulder their social responsibilities and use the best endeavors in riding out the difficulties together with the public. Therefore, in multiple rounds of negotiations on the 2023 tariff adjustment, the government expressly requested the power companies to mitigate the increase in tariffs the best they can with a view to lowering the current tariff increase, which is principally due to the rise in the international fuel prices. This aside, will keep on examining critically the power company's capital expenditure in accordance with the scheme of control agreements. By exercising stringent control, we can ensure that the power company's investment are only made according to the actual needs of Hong Kong. Through controlling the deployment of capital, the level of tariffs can be suppressed to the maximum extent possible. Besides, under the SCAs, the fuel cost is charged on the actual basis, such that the power companies cannot make any profits from it. While maintaining a stable electricity supply in Hong Kong, we will monitor the fuel prices and procurement mechanism of the power companies. Looking forward, we'll continue to explore various measures to stabilize electricity tariffs, including developing a diversified fuel mix, as well as strengthening collaboration with neighboring regions to increase the import of zero-carbon energy such as wind, solar, and nuclear energy. We will also explore and examine feasible options under the SCAs, including the introduction of competition in the long run in order to suppress the level of tariffs. The third part of the question relates to consumption vouchers. The government has implemented 2 rounds of consumption voucher schemes in the past 2 years, dispersing electronic consumption vouchers of 5,000 and 10,000 to eligible persons respectively, benefiting more than 6 million people each year and injecting a total of over $95 billion of purchasing power into the local consumption market. The overall response of the community towards the schemes has been very positive. They consider that the scheme has helped boost consumer sentiment and promote the wider adoption of local electronic payment. However, the scheme incurs a relatively large amount of public fund, and in deciding whether to launch similar initiatives, again, the government must make prudent and holistic considerations, including the social, livelihood, and economic conditions, the current financial situation, etc., to ensure that measures are in the overall interest of Hong Kong. Thank you. Mr. Tang Fei. President, with regard to liberalization of the power companies. Now, even this term of government has made different positions. In last July, the Secretary for EE said that the market will not be opened up. And then in late October, he said that he could consider introducing power supply from outside Hong Kong. And the Secretary just told us that it could be considered in the long run. Can there be a roadmap and timetable for consulting the public for opening up of our power market? Undersecretary for Environment and Ecology, thank you. The scheme of control agreements will ensure that members of the public can enjoy safe, reliable supply of power in a sustainable manner. And we have also got a scheme of control agreement, and the annual rate of return allowed under the scheme is now lowered to 8%. We have to respect the spirit of the contract, and we cannot lower that rate of return further. We control their capital investment, and each year's tariff hikes we gatekeep very strictly. And under the scheme, we are exploring other feasible options. In the long run, we can introduce competition to suppress the level of tariffs. We have a number of measures to stabilize electricity tariffs. We have a number of diversified fuel mix options. We strengthen collaboration with neighboring regions to increase the import of zero carbon energy, etc. We will continue to follow up on this item. We have heard members' views, and they will be considered in the process. Dr. So Chang-wing. Before the 2019 anti-extradition bill route, please clip your microphone to your lapel. Before that, we had 68,000 visitors from the mainland. And now we have resumed normal cross-boundary travel. And all our borders are opened, and the number of visitors from mainland will escalate. This will greatly help our economy. But that will also jack up consumption prices, and we must strike a balance. So I'd like to ask whether the government is prepared. What are their plans to suppress escalating prices? And you have to take care of the sudden expansion and demand so that prices will not soar. We have to ensure the quality of life of the community. Secretary for Financial Services and the Treasury. Thank you, President. I thank Dr. So for his question. My reply is as follows. It's true that as we have resumed normal cross-boundary travel, the flow of people between the two places will increase. That will bring momentum to our economic recovery. But then it will also cause some changes in our local market, the retail sector in particular. We're now working on the budget. Different stakeholders have given us their views. We have to consider different measures, and we will try our very best to alleviate the impact on the disadvantaged in Hong Kong. We have to closely monitor the trend in prices and how that impact on people's livelihood. So in our budget consultation, we will continue to monitor the changes in economic activities and consumer prices. We will take care of the public's affordability, and we will have consideration and measures for the disadvantaged. Mr. Michael Tian. Mr. Adrian Ho. Thank you, President. I thank Mr. Tang Fei for expressing his concerns for the economic burden on the community. We opened our borders last month, and we are on the road to normalcy. The Financial Secretary said that the economy will perform better than what it was last year. However, the effect is unlikely to be felt by the public so soon. And even before we can enjoy the fruits of economic recovery, we will face increasing burden, financial burden. Can there be a 1 month waiver of PRH rent? Can there be extra payment of CSSA? Can we help the grassroots families so as to alleviate the financial burden of this group of people in the community? Secretary for Financial Services and the Treasury. Thank you for your question, Mr. Ho. While our economy will perform better than it did last year, we have to closely monitor the pace and also the extent of economic recovery. Confidence will be lower in the first phase, and income growth of different industries may differ, and different families may have a different view of the economic recovery. Taking all these into account, and we also have to be prudent about expenditure. We may not remove all one-off relief measures in one go. We are mindful of that. As for specific measures, we're going to take. Forgive me for not being able to give you a full list now, because, as I said, we are now in the middle of the budget consultation exercise. But then views are noted, and they will be fully considered by the Financial Secretary. In my main reply, I said that in considering different measures, we will try to alleviate the financial burden on the disadvantaged in Hong Kong, because we know that they are the needy group in society. Mr. Tang Fei, or rather Mr. Johnny. Now, many public transport operators have lodged application for fare increases. Will you consider BPA's position to extend the $2 transport subsidy scheme to all full-time students, and also enhance the transport fare concession scheme? And have you considered the fact that the tariff prices do not tally with the increase in fuel prices? Thank you. Yes, we are now consulting the community on the budget measures. I'm afraid I'm not in a position to respond to these requests immediately. Some measures will add to our financial burden and expenses. In 2022-23, our fiscal deficit is expected to reach over $100 billion. Of course, during the pandemic, we faced economic challenges, and we took bold and decisive measures to support members of the public and SMEs and to stabilize public confidence. And these measures were effective, and they were well recognized by credit rating companies. Now, the pandemic has eased, and we have resumed normal travel with the mainland. Since the economy will gradually pick up, our fiscal strategies will have to be adjusted accordingly. The Financial Secretary mentioned that in the coming fiscal year, we will transit from a rather expansionary model to a moderately tight model, and we will enhance our investment in public expenditure. And then we have to control public expenses to stabilize confidence in our financial position. That is the overall framework in considering various relief measures. Mr. Ronick Chen, thank you. With regard to the disbursement of consumption vouchers, the community support that in the main, but of course there are concerns about the affordability of public resources and also the way vouchers are dispersed. Now, if consumption vouchers can be dispersed to specific groups, for instance, some of the vouchers can only be spent in retail and tourism and hospitality sectors. Now, if we can overcome the technical hurdles, that is a very good suggestion. Will you consider how to overcome such hurdles so that the public can boldly make such suggestions to you, so that the effect of the consumption voucher scheme if it is to be relaunched, can be more satisfactory. Thank you. Now, the policy intent of the consumption voucher scheme is to promote local consumption. And the last 2 rounds of the scheme were introduced with that in mind. As regards whether we'll continue to disperse consumption vouchers and in what way, again, my reply is I cannot give you any answer at this stage. The Financial Secretary will consider different views in drafting the budget, and come the 22nd of February, his draft estimates will give you an answer. Now, for any public policy, once we have a policy objective, we should achieve that as far as possible. As regards the technical details, whether they be related to technology or technical aspects, we should try to overcome them so that we can achieve our objective in our policy intent. Thank you. Mr. Tang Fei, thank you. The Secretary said that government money should be spent properly and must be in the overall interest of the community. He said that the economy has not picked up very well yet, and that he also admitted that there was inflation. Now, electronic consumption vouchers for sure can boost public confidence, boost the economy, and provide relief to members of the public. So please have another round of consumption voucher scheme, and then we also want public light housing. Thank you. Thank you for your question and your views. Now, as I said in my main reply, the headline and underlying inflation rates last year was 1.9% and 1.7% respectively. We'll closely monitor the economic development and also a change in prices, because they will impact on people's livelihood, and will closely monitor these factors. As regards consumption vouchers, as I said, the budget is still being drafted, and I cannot give you a definite answer, but we have met different sectors and different legislators, and they have expressed the same wish, and the FSF would surely consider these views. Thank you.
Question 2, the Honorable Edward LEUNG. Thank you, President. It is learned that the United States, in facing a manpower shortage of doctors, has introduced a nurse practitioner system under which nurses may become nurse practitioners after completing studies of relevant programs, so that they may use their nursing expertise and experience to share part of the doctor's workload. Some states even allow nurse practitioners to provide consultation independently. In this connection, will the government inform this council whether it has studied the introduction of a registered nurse practitioner system in Hong Kong and the offer of programs related to nurse practitioners in universities? As it is learned that at present, the hospital authority has established nurse clinics for some specialties, whereby nurses conduct follow-up assessment on the conditions of patients referred by doctors and monitor patients' medication, whether it knows the implementation details and the effectiveness of such work. And given that there is a serious shortage of health manpower in Hong Kong and the demand for healthcare manpower will become more acute due to an aging population, whether the government will consider introducing a registered nurse practitioner system so as to strengthen district healthcare services and support the implementation of the primary healthcare blueprint. Secretary for Health. President, I thank Mr. Edward LEUNG for your question and your suggestion. And this subject shows your concern about the shortage of healthcare manpower. And I would like to explain here the government's efforts in healthcare manpower planning and professional development. In 2012, the government set up the Steering Committee on Strategic Review on Healthcare Manpower Planning and Professional Development to study the manpower planning, development, and regulation of healthcare professionals in Hong Kong. In 2017, the Steering Committee published the strategic review, and it pointed out the pivotal role played by nurses in revitalizing healthcare systems through advanced nursing practice and enhanced quality of care in clinical specialties. Currently, doctors and nurses perform different functions with division of work. Well, let me give you an analogy. It's like the white and black keys on the piano. They complement each other, and they are both indispensable. The government has also been sparing no effort in strengthening the role of nurses in medical care services so that they could provide better care for patients with their professional expertise. Now, Mr. Edward LEUNG has also mentioned this. In 2018-19, the HA launched the integrated model of specialist outpatient services through nurse clinics. Patients who are considered suitable to participate in the pilot scheme after screening by doctors will be followed up by nurse clinics at different stages of their treatment. So nurses at these clinics are managed by advanced practice nurses and nurses who have received specialist training. They will engage in a preliminary physical examination of patients prior to consultations with doctors, as well as investigation, assessment, and nursing care, etc. The pilot schemes covered 24 nurse clinics and 4 specialties upon its launch in 2018-19 and has been expanded to 115 nurse clinics and 17 specialties in 2022-23. And nurses play a significant role in the area of primary healthcare services. In district health centers, nurses are care coordinators who conduct health risk assessments for DHC members and work with other allied health professionals and social workers to develop personalized health management plans for citizens and provide healthcare advice. And they also arrange for those in need to be further diagnosed by network medical practitioners. The primary healthcare office under the Health Bureau continue to collaborate with the Hong Kong Academy of Nursing to offer the post-registration certificate course in primary healthcare nursing, DHC module, to enhance the skills of nurses in primary healthcare and encourage them to give full play to their potential in the development of primary healthcare in Hong Kong. In tandem with the strengthening role taken up by nurses in provision of healthcare services, the government has also implemented various measures to enhance their professionalism, raising the quality of healthcare services as a result. For example, the government invited the Nursing Council of Hong Kong to launch the voluntary scheme on advanced and specialized nursing practice in 2018, under which core competencies were formulated for 16 specialties to enhance the professional competence of nurses and the service quality of clinical specialties in Hong Kong. Both DH and HA will organize training courses for eligible nurses to encourage them to qualify as specialized nurses. At the same time, HA created the new rank of Associate Nurse Consultant in 2021-22 on top of the existing Nurse Consultant and has continued to recruit more staff for these 2 positions. This has not only enhanced the career progression pathway of the nursing grade, but also helped improve the quality of nursing care and the mode of service delivery through the professional services. In 2022, the HA launched the Greater Bay Area Specialty Nursing Knowledge Exchange Program, under which nurses in the mainland are arranged to come to Hong Kong and conduct professional exchanges with HA nurses to raise the quality of nursing care. To maintain the level of service of Hong Kong's healthcare system, apart from enhancing the professionalism of nurses, we also need to retain and attract nursing talents. In fact, in addition to the shortage of doctors, we are also facing the situation of nursing manpower shortage. Deploying experienced nurses to undergo training for an extended period so that they could perform certain duties of doctors may further affect the supply of nursing manpower for provision of nursing care. The government is actively retaining and attracting nursing talents. Other than maintaining the specialty nurse allowance, the home loan interest subsidy scheme, and the extending employment beyond retirement policy at HA, NCHK has increased frequency of its licensing examination for Part 1 general registration from once to twice a year since 2016. The government has also announced in the 2022 policy address its plan to create new pathways for admission of qualified, non-locally trained nurses by way of legislation, including introduction of limited registration and special registration schemes with reference to experience gained from the legislative amendment exercise in 2021 for admission of non-locally trained doctors. Moreover, to ensure the professional standards of nurses and tie in with measures in the 2021 policy address, we will also require by legislation nurses' compliance with the continuing nursing education requirement upon renewal of their practicing certificates. We are formulating the specific details of the relevant proposals and will proceed to consult relevant stakeholders. Subject to the progress of our deliberations, we plan to submit to the Legislative Council our proposed amendments to the Nurses Registration Ordinance within the first half of 2023. These measures can serve the purposes of increasing the supply of nursing manpower, enhancing the training and professional standards of nurses. So in that case, we don't have to separately establish another category of nursing professional qualification. So the government has no plan to study the introduction of a nurse practicing system at this juncture. Mr. Edward LEUNG, thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Secretary. The government has proposed 2 10-year hospital development programs to increase the number of hospital beds so as to shorten the waiting time for patients. At the same time, the government has issued the Healthcare Manpower Planning and Professional Development. The shortage of doctors will double for doctors, and there will be 2,000 doctors in short. So without establishing a nurse practitioner systems, how can we fill the gap? I'm happy to learn that the government plans to introduce non-locally trained nurses. So when the number of nurses goes up, can we consider introducing the nurse practitioner system? It has worked effectively in the United States and Europe, and I hope that you can consider my view. How can we resolve the problem of the shortage of doctors? In our manpower projection, we see that there are acute shortages in doctors and nurses. For doctors, we are running short of over 1,500 doctors. For nurses, the number of shortfall is as high as 3,000. So we are working on both fronts. We hope to increase both professions in the number. So we should adopt a multi-pronged approach, which I have just outlined. I think that doctors and nurses have their own professionalism, and we will increase the number of both professions. Dr. David Lam. Thank you, President. I'd like to thank Mr. Edward LEUNG for his question. In fact, the nursing staff shortage is more acute than that for doctors. Every year, we have around 2,000 to 3,000 nursing graduates. And in the HA and private hospitals, the wastage rate is very high. So there is a pressing need for us to jack up or strengthen nurse training so that graduates can become enrolled nurses and registered nurses. We also would like to further deepen the training so that we can have specialized nurses. And the President referred to a voluntary registration scheme. We want to enhance the quality of nurses. We want to better regulate them. We want to achieve better planning so that there is a proper registration system. As the healthcare system develops, there is a greater need for health care manpower. So there should be division of work among the different professions. Indeed, there is a duplication of tasks. Dr. David Lam, please come to your question. Yes, thank you, President. My question is this. Do we have any plans to bring our nursing care to a new level, and that there is a statutory registration system for them? Thank you, Dr. Lam, for your question. For our specialized nursing professional development, we have 16 specialties as mapped out by the Nursing Council of Hong Kong. And right now, we have a voluntary scheme on advanced and specialized nursing practice. And at appropriate juncture in the future, we will consider how to further follow up on this scheme, whether there should be a statutory system to be put in place for accreditation. So we will consider that at an appropriate time. Please, Secretary, can you move your phone further a bit from you because there has been some interference. Mr. Tony Chair. Thank you, President. In the main reply, the Secretary mentioned about strengthening the role of nurses in providing healthcare and enhancing their professional standards so that better service can be provided to patients. And as members pointed out, the Secretary has admitted that there is an acute shortage of nurses. That is indisputable. When the LegCo scrutinized the bill on the residential care homes, we heard that the fact sector faces an acute shortage of nurses. So they asked whether that experienced nurses who have been properly trained or healthcare staff, care workers have been properly trained to take up the duties of the nurses in the future. So since its secretary is here, would you be working with the LW colleague who is responsible for RCHE and RCHD to relieve the acute shortage of nurses in the sector? Secretary. When we consider whether nurses are needed in different organizations, the Health Bureau has been liaising with the different organizations on residential care homes. For some care work, actually some care assistants can help out. Now, as to the exact number of nurses needed by residential care homes, the government is monitoring it closely, and we are doing all sorts of communications, and we would adjust the number of formal nurses needed in residential care homes appropriately. Which part of the question has not been answered? Would you consider asking the care workers to take on duties, some duties of nurses? Would you consider that? The Secretary has not answered. Like I said, if some care work does not entail the engagement of nurses, definitely the care workers can help. Because in residential care homes and hospitals, there are quite a number of care workers who are helping out with the nurses. But there are indeed some professional duties which have to be undertaken by the nurses who have the necessary qualifications. We would conduct a review on the number of nurses needed. Mr. Leighton Kwok, in his reply to Mr. Edward Leung's question on whether to introduce a nurse practitioner system, the Secretary said at the outset that the government has been doing a lot of work to address the manpower shortage. And at the end, he said that the government does not have a plan to introduce such a system. Sorry. Well, since the United States and European countries have introduced the nurse practitioner system, has the government studied why the system is needed in these other countries? What effect has it achieved? And if system is to be instituted, what kind of training and resources are entailed? And then you can come up with the conclusion as to whether Hong Kong can do it or not. If the government has not studied into the matter at all, will the government embark on a study into this? Secretary. In my main reply, I've emphasized one point at the outset, and that is doctors and nurses perform different functions, and they complement each other. They have a division of work. I also use the analogy of the black and white keys on the piano. So the nurse practitioner system is about nurses being trained in a nursing program in university, or maybe the nurses should also receive a master's degree, and they receive professional training, and then they have to undergo another training program in the universities in order to become nurse practitioners. So that entails changing from one rank, one grade to another grade. Is it cost effective, or is it better to train up more doctors? Well, in overseas countries, such a system is used in some remote areas like villages, where doctor is in acute shortage. But then they do have nurses there. So there, the nurses have been transformed to become a nurse practitioners performing the duties of a doctor. But for now, Hong Kong is not suited to that kind of model. So that's why we say that we will not consider that. Mr. Dominic Lee, the secretary, said that both doctors and nurses are short-handed, and the chief executive in the policy addressed that we should attract talent. So the secretary, would you consider this? Well, it seems that you are not willing to introduce a nurse practitioner system. Would you consider that try to attract such professionals from overseas to Hong Kong? Well, for doctors, maybe who are trained overseas, who have not been able to meet the requirements of a qualified doctors under Hong Kong, give them the title of nurse practitioners and let them work in Hong Kong. Well, the government has been attracting overseas talents all along. We have a special pathway for non-locally trained doctors in terms of under a limited registration regime. And for nurses, we are also going for legislation to introduce qualified non-locally trained nurses by the introduction of limited registration and special registration regimes. Well, as to establish or create a new rank of nurse practitioners, as I said, well, the two professions perform different functions, and we don't want to mix them up for now. Nurses have their own professional development. They don't necessarily have to become doctors. Well, from my personal experience in an operating theater, we have a surgeons and we have nurses who cooperate to perform a surgery, and the surgeons cannot replace the role of nurses, and likewise vice versa. Mr. Eric Yim. Thank you, President. We are running short of healthcare manpower in Hong Kong. Apart from increasing manpower, I think we should attach importance to raising the quality and effectiveness of healthcare services. So what kind of strategies and measures would the government adopt? Would you be going for, say, automation or using more intelligent systems? Now, in enhancing efficiency, adoption of technology may be one means. And the HA has done a lot of work in building a smart hospital. The HA has tried to help colleagues to save on manpower by using technology. We would try to work more in that direction. We would be coming up with technology-related policies to enhance efficiency. For example, we have smart dispensaries, smart drug delivery services can help save manpower and enhance our efficiency.
Question 3, Yung Hoi-yan. It is learned that the birth rate in Hong Kong has been declining continuously, and the total fertility rate fell to 0.77 in 2021, which was far below the natural population replenishment rate of 2.1, and was one of the lowest in the world. In this connection, would the government inform this council whether the government has compiled statistics and conducted studies on the continuous decline in the fertility rate and the continuous rise in the median age of women at first childbirth, as well as reviewed its approach of encouraging but not interfering adopted so far, so as to formulate corresponding policies to address the relevant causes, thereby turning the fertility rate to make it go up. Second, whether it has plans to formulate comprehensive and all-embracing supporting policies on aspects such as childbearing, child rearing, and education, for example, setting standards for childcare services according to the age groups of children, centralizing the management of facilities for community care services, improving the relevant tax benefits and providing subsidies for child rearing so as to alleviate the burden of families in respect of childbearing and child rearing. And third, of the new plans in place to promote family-friendly workplaces, and whether we'll consider introducing a family-friendly enterprise certification system so as to encourage enterprises to implement family-friendly policies such as those for protecting the rights and interests and maternity benefits of pregnant women. Secretary for Labor and Welfare. President, the issue of fertility concerns about a wide range of policy aspects and bureau, including the Health Bureau, Home and Youth Affairs Bureau, Education Bureau, Civil Service Bureau, Financial Services and the Treasury Bureau, Constitutional and Mainland Affairs Bureau, Labor and Welfare Bureau, and other relevant departments. In response to the member's question, I give the reply on behalf of the government as follows. First, the Census and Statistics Department regularly compiles and releases statistics on fertility rates and median age of women having first-order live births. Factors underlying the fertility trend include marriage postponement, increased prevalence of spinsterhood, decreased marital fertility rate for women, increased divorce rate, and the decreased number of births in Hong Kong to mainland women, etc. For detailed analysis, please refer to Chapter 3 of the publication Demographic Trends in Hong Kong 1991 to 2021 released by CNSD. The decision to bear a child is dependent on various factors, including personal preference, lifestyle, economic and social situations, and childbearing is an important family decision. The government has implemented various measures to foster a supportive environment for childbearing and to promote family-friendly measures to provide better support for couples who wish to bear children, but should avoid excessive intervention. Second and third part of the question, the family-friendly measures being implemented by the government include: first, supporting parents to raise children. To alleviate the financial burden of taxpayers from dependent children, the government has increased the child allowance under salaries tax since the year of assessment 2018 to 19. The allowance for each child and the increase in allowance for each child born during the year have been raised to 120,000. In addition, with the kindergarten education scheme implemented since the 2017-18 school year by the Education Bureau, about 90% of half-day kindergartens are currently free of charge, while the school fees for whole-day kindergartens are maintained at a low level. Families with financial needs may apply for a remission under the Kindergarten and Child Care Center Fee Remission Scheme. To further support families with financial needs, starting from the 2022-23 school year, the fee remission ceiling under KCFRC has been uplifted from the 75th percentile in the past to the 100th percentile of the school fees charged by respective half-day and whole-day kindergartens joining the kindergarten education scheme, so that parents receiving full level of fee remission do not need to pay any difference in school fees. Besides, the Education Bureau has regularized the provision of student grants starting from the 2020-21 school year. All students studying in secondary day schools, primary schools, and special schools, as well as kindergartens, will receive a student grant of $2,500 every school year to alleviate parents' burden in education expenses. Secondly, increasing day child care service. To assist parents who cannot take care of their children temporarily because of work or other reasons, the Social Welfare Department subsidizes non-governmental organizations to provide a variety of child care services to meet the different needs of the parents and their children, including child care center service, occasional child care service, extended hours service, neighborhood support child care project, and mutual help child care center. To enhance the long-term planning of childcare services, the government has formulated and incorporated a population-based planning ratio for aided child care center places, that is, 100 places per 25,000 population, into the Hong Kong Planning Standards and Guidelines in March 2020. With a view to responding to the community's strong demand for CCC services, the SWD is committed to increasing aided CCC places with provision of long full-day childcare service for children under the age of 3 through various means such as land sale schemes, public housing, estate development, or redevelopment projects. Third, fostering a family-friendly environment. The government strives to encourage employers to implement family-friendly employment practices, including flexible work arrangements, additional leave benefits, offering living support, etc., so as to assist employees to balance their work and daily needs. The Labor Department is planning to organize the Good Employer Charter 2024 to encourage employers to implement family-friendly employment practices and adopt good human resource management. In addition, the paternity leave and maternity leave under the Employment Ordinance will increase to 5 days and 14 weeks respectively in 2019 and 2020, which have enabled eligible employees to have more time to spend with and take care of their newborn babies. As a good employer, the government has endeavored to provide a family-friendly working environment to its employees. The government has implemented the 5-day week initiative by phases starting from 2006 to improve the quality of civil servants' family life without compromising the level and efficiency of public services or incurring additional costs to taxpayers. We will continue to encourage departments which have not fully implemented 5-day week to explore the feasibility of migrating more staff to FDW in a pragmatic manner. Taking into account the actual operational needs, heads of departments may arrange flexible attendance hours and approve no-pay leave for individual colleagues in need. The government will continuously promote and support breastfeeding. We have been actively promoting the adoption of breastfeeding-friendly workplace and premises policy to support and encourage working women to sustain breastfeeding, as well as create favorable environmental conditions for lactating mothers. To this end, the government has amended the Sex Discrimination Ordinance to prohibit discrimination and harassment towards breastfeeding women. In addition, the Home and Youth Affairs Bureau will continue to support work of the Family Council in promoting family core values such as love and care, respect and responsibility, and communication and harmony to members of the public, as well as promoting and encouraging the wider adoption of more diversified and flexible family-friendly employment practices in the community, such as encouraging breastfeeding. To this end, the Council will launch a set of new promotional videos and radio television programs in 2023 to 2024. Thank you. Ms. Yung Hoi-yan, President, I'm very disappointed at the administration's reply, especially it talked about encouraging yet not interfering. Why would you say this as intervention? Do you actually have a childbirth policy at the moment? In 2014, I see that there is actually a report published that is 9 years ago, and in 1987 we're talking in 2011 we have around only 20,000 births per year, but then now it's only around 36,000 in the year 2021. So is that actually a warning to us? Without a good childbirth policy, how can you really know that your family-friendly measures are actually being implemented correctly and appropriately and meet the needs of people? I want to know whether the government has set up a childbirth policy that actually encourages families to do that. Well, you now say that 2 children are not enough. You should instead have 3 children. So how can you really encourage people to have 3 children? Secretary, thank you, Ms. Yung, for your question. As I said in my main reply, it is actually a family's preference in the number of children. Well, Ms. Yung has children, I also have children. There are actually many factors that need to be considered. What we can do as a government is to try to implement family-friendly measures and to provide support for those who wish to bear children. As I said in my reply, this involves tax, childcare, pre-kindergarten schooling, etc. All these are included. I hope you all understand that a low birth rate is not prone in Hong Kong only. Well, look at the neighboring countries, including Singapore and South Korea. They're all faced with low childbirth rates as well. We hope through different measures to gradually see an increase in the birth rate. Mr. Rock Chen. Thank you, President. the Secretary has introduced many different family-friendly measures. I want to follow up on the measures. Other than being implemented in the government departments, would they actually cover other statutory organizations and other public organizations to ensure that all of these organizations can implement the same family-friendly measures? President. Thank you for Mr. Chan's question. Well, other than being a leader in promoting family-friendly measures, the Labor Department, through setting up the Good Employer Charter, has been taking the lead in encouraging both public and private organizations to implement family-friendly measures. What we can do at the Labor Department is to provide a platform. And with the Good Employer Charter, we can encourage employers to implement good practices, and through communication to learn from each other, to share their good practices, and to encourage more employers to join the charter. Dr. Tan Yue-heng. Thank you, President. Our birth rate is very important for our population. As the Secretary said, it involves many different policy aspects and bureaux, and you listed out 7 bureaus. So you can see that this involves many different departments. Faced with an aging population and a low birth rate, we do need to attach more importance to population issues. Currently, only the SWD is focusing on those policies. What are your plans for the future to try to come up with more overall and comprehensive planning? Secretary. Thank you, Dr. Tan, for your question. Indeed, encouraging birth rate, we must first implement family-friendly measures, and it's not only the responsibility of the Labor and Welfare Bureau. As I said in my reply, it involves around 7 or 8 other bureaus. We must create a better environment to try to alleviate the issue of low birth rate. We must look at the population and manpower. Under the leadership of the CS, we do have statistics and figures, and thus we will promote different measures with the same target to encourage families to have children so that we can gradually see an increase in the birth rate. Thank you. Mr. Tommy Cheung. Thank you, President. Well, this year when we met with the FS, we also discussed a tax concession for those who have children. We hope there could also be tax concession for those employing domestic helpers. Well, although there has been 15 years of free education in most of the kindergartens, many of the middle class are still not confident in our local school system, and they put their children in international schools. We suggest that there'll be 16 years of free education starting from kindergarten, and for those who go to non-subsidized schools and non-profit organizations, we suggest the government to provide a school voucher for parents. Of course, that would be capped. And such a measure will encourage parents to have more children. Would you consider bringing this back to the administration? Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Chung, for your suggestion. I know you have raised this with the FS. I can, of course, once again relay this back to the FS to see whether to adopt this recommendation. Dr. Ngan Man Yu. Thank you, President. Many people are unwilling to have children in recent years. In Japan, there would be a one-off subsidy and to provide cash to those who are willing to have children. And the DAB has also suggested plans to try to increase the birth rate. Would you try to consider providing with some financial measures to help support those who wish to have children? Secretary. Thank you for your question. Well, there are ways to support grassroots families. There are some kind of matching funds that people can join. My recollection is sort of like a one-to-one matching fund. And after a couple of years, those grassroots will be able to use that money to pursue their dreams in a couple of years. In our teen project scheme, there's also a 10,000 grant for those who join. We do hope to help grassroots children to pursue their dreams, and indirectly will also be able to support those families who wish to have more children. Ms. Nixie Lam. Well, as the Secretary said, Ms. Yung has children, but I don't have children yet. Well, even though when you complete your studies, you start working, the women will already be over the age of 30. And then after 30, we reach a year. So your fertility rate is only 60%. And by the time you reach 40, the fertility rate is only about 20%. So even if I want to have children, I would need more money because I would need more resources to support children. Well, child care service is not something easily accessible in Hong Kong. Would you consider working with large organizations to come up with flexible working hours, or to provide more child care services, or to provide part-time work to new mothers? These can be measures adopted temporarily to create a better family-friendly environment and to relieve pressure on parents so that those who wish to have children would not find it so stressful. Secretary. Thank you for your question. So when we organized the Good Employer Charter, we are hoping that those who join the charter would implement family-friendly employment practices and to provide more support for new parents to alleviate their pressure. We are going to continue to promote this line of work. Mr. Benson, look. Thank you, President. As the Secretary said, the issue of fertility concerns actually involve over 7 bureaus. This is actually quite a heated topic when we talk about young people. Well, you talked about encouraging but not interfering policy for having children, yet it is because of this concept that we have inadequate housing, and I do not want to see that in 10 years' time we would see inadequacy or not enough population as well. We do need more support for families. We hear that pregnant women, from the time they become pregnant, they're already spending a lot more. In Japan, you can see that a one-off grant is given to new parents, so it's around a 20,000 Hong Kong dollar grant to as a sort of support to new parents. Well, I have to declare interest that I do not yet have children. So would the administration give up your approach of encouraging but not interfering? Or we talk about childbirth, we are not talking about a family-friendly policy here. We should talk about childbirth policy instead. Thank you. Well, I didn't actually say this. It should not be laissez-faire, but I should say that we do not want to interfere, yet we encourage childbirth. During pregnancy, our health and maternity clinics actually provide free of charge services, and now maternity leave has been extended for an extra 4 weeks. And this subsidy is actually returned to the employer. We're talking about 300 million per year in that support. We want to encourage more women to bear children. Thank you.
Question for Dr. Chow Man-kong. President, a survey report has pointed out that current support provided by the government for students with special educational needs, SEN students, from the grassroots is insufficient, and that families of these students cannot afford support services of NGOs for SEN students. In this connection, will the government inform this council, one, of the current professional support services provided by the Education Bureau, the Social Welfare Department for SEN students, and set out by service types, for example, speech therapy, occupational therapy, physiotherapy, child psychiatric service, educational psychology service, clinical psychology service, applied behavior analysis therapy, and early childhood educator service, and stage of education, kindergarten, primary school, and secondary school information, such as the name of the service programs, names of responsible government departments or organizations, the amount of subsidies available, and the number of beneficiaries. 2. As is learned that at present most kindergartens, primary schools, and secondary schools have not publicly disclosed the types of SEN students they support and the content of services they provide, leaving quite a number of parents at a loss when they choose schools for their children to pursue further studies or change schools. Whether the authorities will consider expressly stipulating that schools must publicly disclose relevant information in detail, if so, of the details, if not reasons for that. 3. Given that families of grassroots SEN students cannot afford training and therapy services provided by NGOs, and that such organizations seldom provide services free of charge, whether the authorities have considered allocating additional resources and introducing therapy vouchers, training vouchers, so that students may receive more outside school therapies and participate in these trainings, if so, of the details, if not reasons for that. Secretary for Education. President, the government attaches great importance to the growth and development of children with special needs and has been adopting the principles of early identification, early intervention, and cross-sectored collaboration to provide diverse and comprehensive support services through the concerted efforts of government bureaus and departments. In brief, Health Bureau and the Hospital Authority are responsible for providing assessment and medical services. The Social Welfare Department is responsible for providing preschool rehabilitation services, while the Education Bureau is responsible for providing learning support to help students with special needs to overcome their limitations, attain the learning level, and develop their potential. Our reply to Mr. Chow's question is as follows. 1. Under the existing policy, children under the age of 6 who have special needs may obtain support through services provided by the SWD. The on-site preschool rehabilitation services provides training for children under the age of 6 with mild disabilities who are attending kindergartens or childcare centers that have joined the scheme. It also supports teachers, childcare workers, parents, and carers. The early education and training centers, the integrated program in kindergarten cum childcare centers, and special childcare centers provide training and care to children diagnosed with different degrees of disabilities to facilitate their growth. In 2021 to 22, the numbers of service users of these services were 8,933, 3,980, 1,938, and 2,153. The Bureau adopts a dual-track mode in the provision of learning support for primary and secondary students with SEN. Subject to the assessment and recommendations of specialists and the consent of parents, the Bureau will refer students with more severe or multiple disabilities to aided special schools for intensive support services. As for other students with SEN, they will attend ordinary schools under the Integrated Education IE approach implemented by the Bureau. The Bureau has been providing additional resources and support for special schools. For example, the class size in special schools is smaller, 8 to 15 students per class, and they will also be provided with additional regular teachers and specialist staff, including occupational therapists, physiotherapists, speech therapists, and nurses, and extra allowances, such as the additional support grant for enhancing the support for boarders with medical complexity. In 2021-22 school year, 8,300 students attending aided special schools benefited from these measures. Some special schools also operate a boarding section to the long-term residential needs of students with more severe or multiple disabilities. In the 2022-23 financial year, the Bureau's expenditure on special education amounts to around $3.6 billion, representing an increase of about 44% compared to the 2017-18 financial year. Meanwhile, the Bureau adopts the approaches of whole school approach, homeschool cooperation, and cross-sector collaboration to promote IE in public sector schools, under which additional manpower and resources, including special educational needs coordinators (SANCO), special educational needs support teachers, learning support grant, and grant for supporting non-Chinese speaking students with special educational needs are provided. The support allows schools to flexibly and strategically pull together other school-based and community resources to provide comprehensive and flexible services in accordance with the needs of their students. Furthermore, the Bureau provides professional support to schools, including the school-based educational psychology service, enhanced school-based speech therapy service, resource support program for visually impaired students, and enhanced support service for students with hearing impairment to help students to overcome their limitations. In 2021-22 school year, 58,890 students with SEN attending public sector's ordinary schools benefited. In the 2023 and 22-23 year, the Bureau's expenditure on this area amounts to around $3.7 billion, an increase of 147% compared to 2017-18 year. The Bureau has all along been encouraging schools to enhance transparency, which can enable parents and stakeholders to understand the strategies of schools in supporting students with SEN, as well as provide reference for parents when choosing a school. Currently, all kindergartens joining the kindergarten education scheme have to include information on the support provided to students with SEN in a profile. All sub-public sector primary and secondary ordinary schools are required to state clearly in their school profiles the measures taken to cater for learner diversity and the implementation of WSA. In addition, the content of the annual school reports have to cover IE policies of schools, additional resources received, and support service provided. And the information has to be uploaded. Other than this, the Bureau organizes talks with NGOs providing preschool rehabilitation services every year. The purpose is to help parents to understand various kinds of support provided for students with SEN schools so that they can make necessary preparation for their children when they proceed to primary one. Apart from this, the Bureau has also launched the Sense, a website to provide information on special education so that parents and the public can understand the needs of students with SEN and the kinds of support they require. 3. Besides the learning support in schools, the government also adopts an integrated approach beyond the school campuses. These include the fee waiving subsidies scheme under the after-school care program launched by the SWT, providing full fee waiving, half fee waiving, and one-third fee reduction subsidies for primary students whose parents are unable to give proper care after school. The training subsidy is provided by the SWT for children with special needs under the age of 6 from low-income families and on the waiting list of subvented preschool rehabilitation services in order to help them. The pilot scheme on new service protocol for child and adolescents with ADHD and comorbidity implemented by the HHB provides multidisciplinary assessment and other services. The cross-disciplinary collaborative service model between the specialties of pediatrics and child and adolescent psychiatry implemented by the HA provides a service for patients with mild and stable conditions. The Mental Health Initiatives Funding Scheme by the Advisory Committee on Mental Health also provides support. The government understands the public concern about well-being of children with special needs. We've been continuously allocating resources and enhancing measures. We are happy to listen to stakeholders to enhance these measures to provide quality and efficiency of the services on an ongoing basis in order to provide an environment for healthy development of children with special needs. Mr. Chow, there are 59,000 children with special needs. There are over 70,000 families who belong to this category. However, there is no direct answer to my question. The replies are rather vague and general. I don't think it's from the hands of the Secretary. I asked the Secretary to give me supplementary information. The information is crucial to grassroots families and their children. I'd like to ask, apart from SEN students, their carers are under tremendous mental and financial pressure. Will carer subsidy be provided to SEN carers? In relation to the first part, we are unable to provide the information because of time constraint, but we will provide the information afterwards. Regarding financial pressure on carers, as we've said, that the Education Bureau has adopted a whole school approach to support students with SEN in a comprehensive way. The support provided by the Bureau will marry the needs of the students and the situation of the school. In relation to assistance provided to parents or their families, we will forward your comments to relevant departments and bureau. In relation to assistance outside schools, we work together with different departments to provide support services to students and their carers. We provide the assistance in a comprehensive way. Ms. Lillian Kwok, thank you. In relation to caring for children with SEN, the stress is tremendous. That is particularly so for grassroots families. So mental and physical health are equally important. apart from support service to students with SEN, you mentioned about support to families, which is important. However, these are insufficient. Will the government consider allocating additional resources to parents of children with SEN? If so, please tell me the details, if not the reasons for that. Support to parents. The government make use of an integrated approach to provide professional support and assistance via different channels. The Education Bureau will also provide assistance to parents of students at different stages. We have talks, we have information on our website, we have demonstration of different ways to teach students with SEN. Ms. Chen Yut-ming, thank you. A lot of primary and secondary schools will hire guidance staff. They provide comprehensive counseling service. They organize different activities, group activities, etc. My question is, will the government consider making these counseling positions in schools permanent, and will you put in place a development strategy? Students with SEN in ordinary primary and secondary schools are provided with integrated support services. Apart from support given by professional teams, we also have a learning support grant. We have on-site school support, cross-discipline support services. There are also targeted assistance provided to specific categories. Say, for example, school, secondary school students with learning difficulties will receive with autism will support targeted service. We have a basket of measures to support learning at school. We help them to overcome their difficulties and limitations so that they can tap into their potential and reach the level they are supposed to reach. Dr. Hui Lee, I thank Dr. Chow for asking this question. In the past, the government only used the monetary amount to express the importance attached to students with SEN. Well, students with SEN covers a wide spectrum. They can be gifted children or children with learning difficulties. There are lots of resources and assistance devoted to those with learning difficulties, but what about gifted children? Gifted children are included. They are an important group when it comes to catering for learning diversity. We have 3 levels. First, on the universal level, we will provide supplementary service in accordance with the learning progress of students. For students who are fast learners, there will be enriched programs for them. In relation to the second level, we have enhanced learning assistance provided. If they are elite students, we have the Gifted Children Academy, so that they will receive training to in order to tap into their potential. Say, for example, participating in international competition. We take into account the different learning levels of students when we provide assistance. Mr. Michael Look. I do recognize that the government is willing to spend more on children with educational needs. There has been an increase of 147%. Well, in relation to the pilot scheme on new service protocol, they don't take in new entrants anymore. We asked you whether there will be training vouchers for parents to identify suitable services. They did not give us an answer, not even a yes or no. We asked you to coordinate different services and to enhance transparency. We did not get an answer. We're talking about quality service. Information should be made available to parents for them to find a suitable school. My question is, in relation to the learning support grant, it's given to the school, level 2, 15,000 a year, level 3, 60,000 per student. Well, there is a lump sum for SENCO, hiring, and for activities organization, but for SENCO teachers, they only take care of students with special needs and not to organize school-wide activity. How do you make sure that the grant is used in the best way? I thank Mr. Lok for his question. In relation to training vouchers and the other ideas, as I said, that for professional support outside schools, we take an integrated approach. For support within the school, we target learning and teaching. If a special needs, say for example, speech therapy is identified, they may procure the service for their students. Regarding financial needs of families, they can use different, they can apply for different assistance. For transparency, as I've said, that there are different levels, that there is the school profile on which schools are required to list out the measures and resources for integrated education. Schools will have to set out the measures they have to support SEN students. Every year, schools will have to give us a report, and the report will have to be made available on the school website. Parents are able to find the information, that is, how the resources are used and what measures are available for their children. Parents may not have access to the internet, so we organize talks for parents. Under the integrated education or special schools, we give them information about support services, so parents have access to the information via different channels. If parents don't have time to attend the talks, they can log on. They can use the website SENS to find the information. Our principle in relation to funding is that they will be dispersed on a unit basis, but they'll be used as a whole. But for students to learn, it's very important that they are combined with teaching. So the use of the resources should not be fragmented. We want schools to enhance the efficiency of the funds to help students to overcome limitations.
Question number 5, Mr. Andrew Lam. Mr. President, over the past decade, the number of licensed vehicles in Hong Kong has increased by about 25%. There are views in society that a drastic increase in the number of vehicles will aggravate the problem of traffic congestion. In this connection, will the government inform this council, 1, apart from measures such as raising the first registration tax
for private cars and license fees, whether the government took other measures in the past 5 years to control the increase in the number of vehicles. If so, of the details, if not, the reasons for that. 2. Whether the government has estimated the respective increases in Hong Kong's road length and the number of vehicles in the coming 5 years. If so, the details, if not the reasons for that. And 3. Given that the government gave an account of the latest update on the implementation of smart mobility initiatives, such as the free-flow tolling system at the meeting of the panel on transport of this council in April last year, whether the government has plans to adopt other smart road management technologies in the future to further improve traffic congestion. If so, the details and timetable, if not the reasons for that. Secretary for Transport and Logistics. Mr. President, after consulting the Transport Department, my consolidated reply to various parts of the question raised by Mr. Andrew Lam is as follows. Hong Kong is a small and densely populated city. Over the past years, the government has adopted a multi-pronged strategy to improve transport infrastructure, expand and enhance the public transport system, and manage the use of roads in order to alleviate road traffic congestion in Hong Kong. The continuous growth of private cars has been a major contributing factor to road traffic congestion. In fact, private cars account for as high as 70% of the total number of vehicles. Over the 10-year period from 2010 to 2020, the number of licensed private cars increased by about 38%, from 415,000 to 573,000. In order to alleviate traffic congestion, the 2021-22 budget announced the increase of the rate of each tax band for the first registration tax for private cars by 15% and the vehicle license fee levels by 30%. In the preceding 5 years, that is 2017 to 2021 before the measures were implemented, the annual growth rate of licensed private cars was about 2%. After the implementation of the fiscal measures on February 24, 2021, the growth in licensed private cars has been moderate and indeed has seen a year-on-year decrease of about 1.7% by the end of 2022. In addition, about 90% of daily passenger trips in Hong Kong are made on public transport, the usage of which is one of the highest in the world. Under the public transportation policy of using railway as the backbone, currently the total length of the railway network is about 270 kilometers, which is an increase of about 50 kilometers over the past decade and covers areas inhabited by more than 70% of the local population. Franchise bus routes have increased by more than 12% over the past 10 years. By continuously improving the public transport network, we hope to encourage more people to use public transport and rely less on private cars. Meanwhile, the government has been taking forward road infrastructure projects to cater for traffic demand. In the past 5 years, we have commissioned several major roads, including Tseung Kwan O Lam Tin Tunnel and Cross Bay Link Tseung Kwan O, Tuen Mun Chek Lap Kok Link, Hung Yuen Wai Highway, Central Wan Chai Bypass, and Hong Kong Zhuhai Macau Bridge, etc., adding about 82 kilometers of roads in length. By the end of 2022, the aggregate length of roads in Hong Kong is about 2,220 kilometers. Besides, we are implementing several road projects, including widening of Tai Po Road Sha Tin section, Fanling Bypass Eastern section, Central Kowloon Route and Trunk Road T2, etc. These projects are scheduled to be completed in the coming 5 years and will provide about 8 additional kilometers of trunk roads. To support the continuous development of Hong Kong, we're planning various major roads, such as Trunk Road T4 in Sha Tin, Tuen Mun Bypass, Route 11, and Tsing Yi Lantau Link, etc., and proposed longer-term road projects in the 2022 policy address, including the Northern Metropolis Highway, the Sha Tin Bypass, and the Tseung Kwan O Yau Tong Tunnel, so as to address the future traffic needs through forward planning. In addition, we've been sparing no effort in applying technology in managing road use with a view to enhancing convenience of mobility for citizens. We will gradually implement Hong Kong e-toll, that is the free-flow tolling system at all government-tolled tunnels this year. Motorists can pay tunnel tolls with ease using toll tags without having to stop or queue up at toll booths for payment, thereby saving time and enjoying convenience. The Transport Department has been actively promoting the smart mobility initiatives, among which installation of traffic detectors, collecting real-time traffic data along strategic routes and major roads, new generation of on-street parking meters, pilot real-time adaptive traffic signal system, and automated parking system have gradually commissioned. Besides continuing enhancement of relevant initiatives and implementing Hong Kong e-toll, the government also plans to progressively extend the real-time adaptive traffic signal system to suitable junctions. Looking ahead, we have to embrace innovative ideas and seek breakthroughs on top of the existing transport strategy and introduce new technologies and operating regimes with a view to constructing a safe, reliable, environmentally friendly, and efficient traffic and transport system. We've commenced the Traffic and Transport Strategy Study, TTSS, in December 2021, under which one of the major directions is to optimize the use of limited road space in Hong Kong through harnessing smart transport technologies and big data analysis. We're exploring the implementation of smart motorways in Hong Kong, which will ride on the vehicle-to-everything V2X technology to facilitate the interaction and information transmission between autonomous vehicles and transport facilities, thereby paving the way for the implementation of more flexible and intelligent traffic management in the future. The department plans to put forward preliminary recommendations on the TTSS in the second half of 2023, with a view to promulgating a transport strategy blueprint in 2025, aiming at establishing a transport system that is reliable, safe, smart, environmentally friendly, and highly efficient. Like other major international cities, the demand of motor vehicles in Hong Kong will increase in tandem with the continuous growth of population and economy, as well as the improving quality of living of the citizens. Citizens' decision to buy or own a vehicle depends on multiple factors, including the overall economic situation, personal and household needs, price and supply of vehicles, or even investment opportunities in the market. Hence, it is difficult for us to precisely predict consumer behavior and the number of motor vehicles in the future. Recently, the growth in the number of licensed private cars has declined. We will continue to closely monitor the changes in the overall vehicle fleet size and adopt a multi-pronged strategy through continuously improving transport infrastructure, enhancing public transport system, promoting smart mobility, and establishing highly efficient transport system with a view to alleviating traffic congestion in Hong Kong. Mr. Andrew LAM. Thank you, Mr. President. In the Secretary's reply, the Secretary talks about the TTSS Traffic and Transport Strategy Study, and one of the major directions is to optimize the use of limited road space through harnessing smart transport technologies and big data analysis. I really appreciate that. But my question is this. On this basis, will the government take a further step and consider introducing price difference on the use of roads so as to control the growth of private cars? Secretary. Thank you, Mr. President. My understanding of the price difference as referred to by Mr. Lam is this. In December, we put forward a proposal and discussed with the Council about charging different levels of tolls at different time periods at different tunnels. And with this differentiation, we seek to suppress the number of vehicles using, say, the Cross Harbour Tunnel. And because of the price difference, the toll level difference at different periods of the day, we seek to encourage a change in the commuting pattern of drivers. And through introducing toll level difference, we control and manage the traffic. Mr. Lam Sen-Kao. Mr. Andrew Lam puts forward the question on alleviating traffic congestion. But I think that insufficient parking space is one of the major reasons. Whenever you go to the urban areas, Central, Causeway Bay, Tsim Sha Tsui, Sha Tin, or even Yuen Long, when you can't find a space to park your car, the driver would either circulate the parking lot in the vicinity or just park the cars illegally. And in urban areas, traffic congestion is often caused by double parking, even if you have 3 traffic lanes. For example, near Grand Hyatt, you see the whole lane being occupied by illegally parked cars and then traffic congestion along the other lane. And at the roundabout, if you increase the number of parking spaces, you will be able to alleviate traffic congestion in urban areas. I think this is one way of tackling traffic congestion, especially in urban areas. In August 2021, the Transport Department submitted a paper to LegCo, and it shows that between 2010 and 2020, private cars and lorries increased by 37%, but the number of parking spaces only increased by 8%. So the proportion or the ratio has dropped from 1.1 to 3 to 8 to 1 to 1. Well, please just put your question. My question is whether the government will change the existing planning standards and guidelines so as to provide more parking spaces in the urban areas to meet the demand. Secretary. Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, member, for the questions. Now, in the city area or the downtown area, parking is the common problem facing many places. It is quite impossible to provide sufficient parking spaces in a commercial district, for example. And it is important to disseminate the correct information. As the member just mentioned, when a driver can't find a parking space, the driver would just drive around, and this is the cause of traffic congestion. So, the Transport Department has this app, the mobile application, that provides information about on-street parking. It shows the status of the parking spaces as well as real-time information from different car parks for the benefit of drivers. Of course, there may be a change in the parking status after the driver has set off. But if you check the app and find that there is no space at all in the vicinity, you will have to go somewhere else. Now, on the issue of parking, as mentioned by the honorable member, recently, when circumstances permit, we have tried to increase parking facilities. For example, under the single-site multiple-use principle, if possible, we strive to provide more parking spaces in new government buildings. We also have an automated parking system. In other words, if we can make a better use of this system, then in the same space, more than one vehicle can be accommodated. So we encourage the use of automated parking. The other measure that we have is that we also encourage more the use of this system in new government buildings under construction. Now let me turn to enforcement. As far as the police is concerned, they have a set of streamlined enforcement procedures so as to take effective enforcement action on the scene. Mr. Chan Xiu-hong, according to the government's reply, the government has been harnessing technology to bring convenience to motorists and commuters. There are smart mobility initiatives such as pilot real-time adaptive traffic signal system and automated parking system. They are just pilots after all. And there is an expectation shortfall. My question is, why can't the government introduce the adaptive real-time traffic signal system currently being used by the mainland the technology of which is already mature, so that in urban areas we can address the issue of traffic congestion. Secretary, Mr. President, now as far as Hong Kong is concerned, traffic congestion is a bit more complicated than the same issue faced by other countries. Because after all, we are a small and densely populated place. So, for example, some lanes may be blocked by traffic, and there may be interfacing problem with shop operators and pedestrians. These are real and live issues facing us. Now, under the pilot real-time adaptive traffic signal system, we have tried the use of the system at 5 junctions, and we are in the process of identifying suitable junctions where the system will be installed. We find it appropriate to extend the use of this system to other places. Say for Queen's Road East, let's take this as an example. You have the main line of traffic along the road, and you also have junctions with side streets. There are a lot of interactions. So from a traffic management perspective, we take a district-based approach or succinct or an area-based approach. We have a cluster of traffic lights managed all together so as to allow traffic to run smoothly along all 8 junctions. There are other factors. There are, say, minibus stops and bus stops that may affect the effectiveness of the system. So even if the technology is mature in other places, it may not be appropriate to simply copy and use that system here. And in fact, we are trying this new technology, and afterwards we'll consolidate the experience and extend the use of this system to other suitable junctions. Mr. Gary Zhang, about Hong Kong e-toll, the free-flow tolling system, may I know the progress? According to the government, starting this month, this new system will be introduced formally in Tsim Sha control area. But so far, we don't have a timetable. Is it still on schedule, or have you encountered any difficulties? Secretary. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Zhang. For Hong Kong e-toll, we will stick to the schedule. In February, this will be introduced in Tsim Sha control area, to be followed by the implementation date to be set, and then in March it will be expanded to cover 2 other tunnels in Sha Tin. Our schedule remains the same. Well, at the initial stage, however, we did encounter some logistics issue and the trial runs of the system. We have overcome these hurdles. Mr. Lam Chun Sing. Mr. President, well, this year there may be an additional factor leading to a more serious traffic congestion problem. We have more tourists and more coaches in Hong Ham, To Kwa Wan, and the traditional areas frequented by tourists. Traffic congestion may become more serious. So will the government take preemptive action by, for example, providing more parking spaces for coaches so as to support the revival of the tourist industry in Hong Kong and mitigate the possible impact on transport and traffic in the areas? Yes, tourism is one of our pillar industries, and as far as traffic and transport are concerned, we should provide the best support we can for the development of the tourism industry. Now, in the past 3 years, because of COVID-19 we came to a standstill and we are on the path to normalcy, and the tourism industry, as I understand, is also making an effort. Say in Hong Ham, To Kwa Wan, as mentioned by the honourable member, he asked whether it is possible to provide more parking spaces for coaches, either in the area or in the areas concerned or in the vicinity. Say, for example, after dropping off tourists in To Kwa Wan, the driver may not be able to park his coach exactly on the same spot, but there may be other spaces available elsewhere. So it's all about communication, and we're working on it.
Last question seeking an oral reply, Mr. Holden CHOW. Mr. Holden CHOW, is your mobile phone in your pocket? My apologies. President, the funding scheme to support transitional housing projects by non-government organizations, or the funding scheme, was set up in June 2020, and the subsidized projects concerned are being completed one after another. In addition, the government plans to develop a large amount of light public housing, or LPH, to improve the living environment of members of the public living in inadequate housing, including residents currently living in subdivided units, or the SDUs. In this connection, will the government inform this council, one, of the ratio of transitional housing units constructed under the funding scheme allocated to persons who are waiting for public rental housing, or PRH, to those allocated to persons who are not waiting for PRH, as well as the occupancy rate of transitional housing, and set out the relevant information in a table by subsidized project. 2. Whether it will consider providing more concessionary measures for SDU tenants moving to transitional housing or LPH in the new territories, including giving priority consideration to such persons in respect of jobs which the government will take the lead to create locally. Example, outsourced cleaning or other frontline jobs, so that they can take up employments locally, thereby increasing the incentives for SDU tenants to move to such housing. And 3. Whether it will consider taking other measures to incentivize members of the public in need to live in transitional housing, or LPH, in the new territories. If so, of the details. If not, the reasons for that. Secretary for Housing. President, as at the end of September 2022, there were approximately 135,500 general applications for public rental housing, or PRH, and the average waiting time was 5.6 years. Both the 30,000 light public housing, or LPH, units and 20,000 transitional housing units serve to provide short-term accommodation options to needy families currently living in inadequate housing. They are complementary to each other and will not create vicious competition. Our reply to the three parts of Mr. Holden CHOW's question is as follows. 1. As at the end of January 2023, the government has identified land for providing over 20,000 transitional housing units, of which 6,900 have been completed, including about 800 rooms in hotels and guest houses provided under the pilot scheme to subsidize using rooms in hotels and guest houses as transitional housing. About 9,500 more units are expected to be completed by the end of 2023. Among them, since the implementation of the funding scheme to support transitional housing projects by NGOs in June 2020, the Assessment Committee for the funding scheme has approved the funding applications of 43 projects in total, of which 9 projects have already been put into service, providing about 4,400 units. The ratios between Category A tenants, that is, those who have waited for traditional PRH for not less than 3 years, and Category B tenants, that is, other categories, as well as the occupancy rates of the projects are set out in the annex. As at the end of January 2023, the occupancy of the 9 projects is generally satisfactory. Projects in urban areas or near public transport hubs had an average occupancy of over 90%. The occupancy of projects in the new territories was close to 70%. The occupancy of transitional housing projects varies from time to time. For example, processing and vetting of applications for larger projects often take a longer time, and a number of tenants have also moved out after being allocated PRH flags, which necessitated the recruitment of a new batch of tenants. Regarding LPH, projects in the urban area will provide more large units to address family needs, while those in the new territories will provide more small units to cater for the needs of different applicants. Together with the Transport Department, we have been proactively knocking out the necessary ancillary transport arrangements for various projects, such as the addition of suitable alighting and boarding facilities and enhancements of public transport services for the projects in the new territories. We also plan to invite the operating organizations to provide basic services for tenants as appropriate, such as retail shops, laundrettes, study rooms, as well as recreational and community services. LPH enables provision of a considerable number of larger and better equipped housing units with a more pleasant living environment as lower rents within a short period of time. We believe that LPH projects in different districts will be attractive to various types of applicants. We are aware of the vacancy of certain unit types in transitional housing projects in the more remote areas. According to the existing mechanism, if individual organizations encounter practical difficulties in recruiting tenants, they can submit the relevant data to us and apply for adjusting the tenants ratio. At present, approval has been given to 2 projects for adjusting their tenant ratios to 60% and 40%. Both the number of applicants and occupancy are rising steadily after the adjustment. To our understanding, individual NGOs have been providing employment assistance to their tenants, including placements in the vicinity of their residence. Some organizations even assist the children of families in need to enroll in local schools to make sure that all households are able to integrate into the new community. The Labour Department has also set up job centers in various districts to offer easy-to-use employment services to job seekers. Job seekers may apply for jobs through referrals by the job centers or the telephone employment service center where appropriate. The LD also organizes different types of job fairs regularly to provide job seekers with more effective and convenient employment services. We will continue to encourage the NGOs to make use of the relevant services to provide assistance to transitional housing tenants, and will proactively consider requesting the LPH operating organizations to provide similar arrangements. Meanwhile, the Housing Bureau has further coordinated and stepped up the publicity on transitional housing, including providing a link on the webpage of the Housing Department and the Hong Kong Housing Authority for direct connection to the one-stop website on transitional housing. The 6 dedicated district service teams promoting the Ordinance on Tenancy Control of SDUs also introduced the transitional housing projects to the tenants of SDUs and arranged them to join guided tours to visit different transitional housing projects. Moreover, an information counter of transitional housing has also been set up in the HA Customer Service Center so that the operating organizations of transitional housing can more directly get in touch with those in need who are waiting for PRH. Furthermore, the Housing Bureau will launch a central common application form shortly to couple with the information on the one-stop website, which will facilitate submission of applications by the public. At the same time, we will actively explore how to establish a central and unified platform. The HA will progressively distribute promotional leaflets on transitional housing to PRH applicants to facilitate them to learn about the latest information and application channels. Thank you, President. Mr. Holden CHOW. President, Lights Public Housing is a measure to alleviate the inadequate housing situation of subdivided unit residents. For LPH in remote areas and in new territories, local employment opportunities are very important. Will the government consider creating frontline positions in new territories to recruit local residents of LPH or transitional housing units? This will address the employment problem in the Northwest as well as facilitating the development. Now, many government departments are moving to the new territories. Will the government consider my suggestion? Secretary, President, I think employment opportunities in the same district will be very attractive to future residents of transitional housing units or LPH units. As I said, we will share more information with the operating organizations, including the required manpower for capital works and also government projects, I believe it will help local residents to be employed. Mr. Michael Tian. Thank you, President. Secretary, this morning as the Public Works Subcommittee, I asked you about the 1,800 units in Yuen Long. It took 1 year to deliver those transitional housing units. They are to be offered to Category A tenants in the future, in the coming 3 years. You couldn't tell me how many targeted families will there be. You said 700. You couldn't answer me. Now I said 700. Now the actual number is 668. Now the ratio is only 37%. Now at Port Oil Estate, the ratio is also 37%. It means that the 2 transitional housing projects in new territories only have lower than 40% occupancy rate after a year. Now you are asking for $14.9 billion to deliver 4,000 units in Yuen Long and Tuen Mun. You are further increasing the supply in new territories. I understand if you make a mistake once, but why make another mistake? As I mentioned this morning, why don't you withdraw the 4,000 transitional housing units in new territories and only provide the transitional housing units in urban area and lower the production cost from $14.9 billion to $11.5 billion. Otherwise, it would be a waste of public money. Thank you, Mr. Michael Tian. You are right. These are the figures on the annex. At Tong Sam Chun, there are 668 applications for Category A tenants. At Kong Hawaii, there are 290 Category A applications. But this is just the situation at present. Transitional housing projects in new territories are only newly completed. Now for the Tong Sam Chun project, it has been completed for a longer time. However, not many people are aware of the project, and it seems that the location is more remote. The Housing Bureau has been in coordination with the Transport Department to enhance transportation connections with the area. Now, with more people knowing about the possibilities, employment opportunities in the area, the occupancy rates will increase. Now, as the Tong Sam Chun project, the occupancy rate was once as high as 80%. Now it has come down to 70% because some residents have been offered a PRH unit. We should be happy for them. Now, I would take into account members' views in terms of transitional housing units and also LPH units. We will step up publicity to make them, to allow more people to know about them. With better publicity and with better supporting services, I believe that more NGOs and more community organizations will be able to help residents to apply, to make application for a transitional housing or LPH units. And we will deploy our resources as necessary. What question has not been answered? I want to ask the Secretary, will the government consider cancelling the 4,000 transitional housing units in new territories? Secretary. President, in terms of LPH, we think the identified sites are very suitable. There are some 3,000 units in Yuen Long and Shangshui. Now for Tuen Mun, it is a mature new town. Some sites are even very near to light rail stations with bus services. So I think the sites are very suitable. And we will deliver LPH units not just in the urban area, but also in the new territories. There are subdivided units in new territories as well. There are even very poor SDUs in Tuen Mun and Yuen Long. So I think we have to offer the residents in new territories with this opportunity. Ms. Carmen-Kan. Thank you, President. Mr. Chow's question raised the issue on how the government estimates the supply and demand of LPH units. Now, in the main reply, the Secretary mentioned that there will be a central common application form. I think this is a good idea. I wonder how the government can make this happen quicker and also let the public know about the demand. What kind of housing units and what locations are the most attractive for the applicants? Thank you, President. Drawing on the experience of transitional housing projects, we are improving our arrangements, including launching a central common application form and also inviting the housing authority to give out information pamphlets to applicants who have been waiting for a PRH for more than 3 years. This morning, concerning LPH, there have been very constructive suggestions this morning as the PWSC meeting. Can we start accepting applications sooner and get the profile of the applicants sooner? We will consider these suggestions. Mr. Vincent Zhang, President, I have been to Tung Sam Chun many times. I think it is a very successful project. The organization is very diligent. They do a very good job in terms of gatekeeping and allow the suitable tenants to come in. Now, in terms of supporting services and also improving the arrangements, the Bureau promises to launch a central common application form. So I think this shouldn't be just a platform to disseminate information. It should be able to tell tenants what kind of help they will get when they move in. Secretary, thank you, Mr. Zhang. We have been implementing our transitional housing projects. There are many projects which are just newly completed. All the while, we are drawing experience from these projects and we are listening to suggestions to improve. Pamphlets and information packages would be sent out to PRH applicants waiting for more than 3 years. So before June, we will start mailing these information pamphlets. We will even create video footages of transitional housing, even if you can't visit these units in person. So we are willing to try different ways to publicize our project. And like Mr. Vincent Zhang said, if you have been to Tung Sam Chun, you would find it a very attractive project. I was also there as the tour group. You could see how potential tenants' eyes light up when they saw the LPH units. So I hope more projects will be completed to help people in need. Mrs. Regina Ip. Thank you, President. Secretary, my apologies. Yesterday, I was otherwise engaged, so I wasn't there with you as the tour of the Kai Tak LPH. According to my colleagues, the site is quite remote from the residential areas, so there will not be the issue of view blocking. But there are concerns that with more tenants moving in, there will be more pressure as the transportation network as well as supermarkets and other facilities. So I hope the government, I think the government should not criticize these people of stirring conflicts. And how will the government improve the existing facilities? Secretary, thank you, Mrs. Ip. Now about the Kai Tak site. Within the Kai Tak development area, it is near to the developed area. There is it is near the Prince Edward Road and also the sports area. And there are also other parcels of land waiting to be tendered. And also there is a large park near the transportation hub. The park will be commissioned in year 2023 and 24. So I think the site is suitably situated. So this morning, members have raised questions about the development timetable of other facilities in Kai Tak. We should let the members of the public know that the vision of CBD2 remains unchanged. I reiterate here that after 5 years' time, when the LPH project has completed its historic commission, the parcel of land will be returned to developers for its original intention. This morning, there was a parcel called the 1J3 site intended for cultural and recreational purposes with swimming pools and libraries. The Culture, Tourism and Sports Bureau will explore advancing the projects so that the projects can start in the first 5 years period. The government will implement the development of other supporting facilities in Kai Tak in tandem. Mr. Scott Leung. Well, to encourage tenants to move to new territories, you have to give them assurance that there will be opportunities in terms of education and job. Now, for LPH units in Tuen Mun and Tien Shui Wai, they may have to get a job on the other side of new territories. It would undermine the confidence of these tenants in terms of job security. So can the government ensure that future LPH tenants will get an allocation of PRH units nearby? In terms of the long-term allocation of PRH units, there are many considerations. For tenants who are residing in LPH units or transitional housing units, well, of course, there is flexibility in terms of future allocation of PRH units. With more developments in the new territories, northwest, there will be more and more public housing units completed in the north. There will be 9,000 public housing units delivered after the completion of the Queen's Hill project and another project. There will be a lot of job opportunities after the completion of the public housing estates. Say for example, gardeners and also tree artists, and also there will be the new wet markets completed, and there will be new jobs. I was approached by a member of the public. He told me that he doesn't mind moving to the northern metropolis because he sees that there will be a lot of developments there in the future. In the past, we would be worried about worrying about Sha Tin, but now we don't worry anymore. Thank you.
Members' motion on the period for amending the subsidiary legislation